If you watched my apple pie video, which was totally full of fails, you might have heard that I made a backup pie. That backup pie was a rhubarb pie supplemented with cherries, both of which are actually very tart and sour. And so that one had quite a bit of sugar added to it, unlike the apple pie, which was a no sugar added pie. So I've sort of made a video, and yeah, we're gonna talk about rhubarb and rhubarb pie. So I made a backup pie for 4th of July. I made a rhubarb and cherry pie because I didn't have enough rhubarb and I didn't have enough cherries. So I put them together and made a pie. And that turned out well.
This is what rhubarb looks like out in your garden. It's got these huge tropical looking leaves, and it might have red stems, which is very common, but it could also have pink, yellow, or green stems. When you harvest them, you just need to give them a nice little tug, and they will pull out pretty easily if they are ripe. If you give it a little tug and the leaf doesn't just come out stem and all, you need to give it a little bit more time. Now, if you pull it out and it's a little bit spongy, that just means that that stem has gone a little bit of extra time on the bush. Maybe you don't quite want to have it in your pie because it'll be a bit fibrous. If you're breaking off the stems or cutting off the stems, you're actually going to have the potential for letting different insects or bacteria or fungus attack your rhubarb plant. You don't really want that. So just try to harvest those nice clean stems as best you can. You're going to chop off the leaves. The leaves have some sort of toxin in them. I can't remember what it is, but the leaves are toxic, the stems are not. So make sure that you cut off any leaf part that you can see. Also cut off those lower collars where the stems were attached to the original root bulb. I then like to freeze my rhubarb. And when you freeze the rhubarb, all the ice crystals break up the cell walls of the plant. Then I pull them out of the freezer and let all of that liquid drain off, because rhubarb holds a lot of liquid, and that's how you end up with soupy rhubarb pies. It just has way too much liquid. So by freezing it and then draining it, I eliminate some of that liquid and I can enhance other things with my rhubarb liquid. Now you can purchase pre-chopped and frozen rhubarb. Heck, you can purchase frozen cherries if you want to and just make a sort of fresh pie like that, but there's nothing quite like growing your own and making something from your own garden.
This is a reenactment because these are not actually pie cherries. The actual pie cherries that I used, I picked off of a tree that was kind of growing wild. I'm pretty sure it started from seed. It had cherries that went to a dark red color, but they never actually got sweet. They were always very tart. So, you know, wild cherries got put into my rhubarb pie. How I like to rinse off any fruit, that whether I buy it in the store or get it out in the wild, is I put it into a bowl, little squeeze of a fruit and vegetable wash. I'm not like scrubbing them because their skins can't hold up to that. I'm just giving them a soapy rinse off. Insects or things like that that might be on the outside. I also am going to check them over for bird plops or mold spots and bruises and things like that, but I just give them a little wiggle like that. Strainer. And basically I rinse them until the water coming off of them no longer makes any bubbling foam. And I consider that good. If you're just gonna eat the cherries straight, eat all of these cherries within the next day. If you can't eat them today, put them in the refrigerator and eat them tomorrow. But don't just rinse them and then try to keep them in your refrigerator for a week, because you've just removed some of the waxy covering for those, particularly on things like blueberries that have that dusty sort of color to them. Once you get that off of them, they are less protected from molds and fungus and things like that. And those spores are just hanging out in the air all the time. You cannot avoid them. So just start using the cherries as soon as you can. Now, there's two ways to get the pits out of cherries. One way is with a knife. If you've got a nice big cherry, you hit the stone, rotate, give it a twist, and then dig out the stone on the other side. Kind of like little mini apricots or plums or things like that. Clingstone plums. One side. And actually these are probably not clingstone, come to think of it, because you'd have to cut all the flesh off. But yeah, cherries are technically not a berry, they are stone fruit. So if I've got any that have sort of a brown spot or bruise or something like that, you can just cut it off, hit the stone, go around. And you have to do this for each and every cherry. So yeah. Then there's these cool things. And these, pretty nifty. You put them in, center them up, hit the spring. Oh, that didn't quite get it. They're easier on smaller cherries, because what the process is supposed to do is you hit the seed. There we go, and it pops out the other side. And then you just keep on going. Hit the seed, boom. It just springs out the other side. Now, sometimes, as you saw in my first one, I will have a misfire, and I will not have a seed out, and that's why even if I've collected a bunch of fruit and I have, whoop, seed on ground. If I've collected a lot of fruit and I have put it into the freezer, I always kind of, as I'm putting it into my pie, give it a once over every once in a while. I'll miss a stem or a leaf or a pit. So when you're harvesting your own fruit, there's more of a chance for mishaps. When you're cleaning your own cherries, there's a chance for mishaps. Now you can get cherries pre-pitted and frozen and all of this work done. Well, the sorting has been done by humans. Robots haven't replaced us all the way yet, but they've got machines that punch out the seeds on cherries en masse. And they're basically these sort of things, only run by machine. And then you're just gonna fill up your bags. Now this is a 1 quart bag. And if this is completely filled, 1 quart is equal to 2 points, which is equal to 4 cups. If you're in the rest of the world and not the United States and what is it? Liberia that also uses cups. That's about 950 milliliters, which is about enough to fill the average pie crust. You know, when you're doing this, if you just fill up one of these, you're gonna get a pie. However, I like to freeze my fruit, and then I drain off the liquids from my frozen fruit. So I actually lose volume in the process of making my pie fillings. So because of that, I'll actually go with 2 quarts of fruit, frozen and then unfrozen, defrosted, and strained so the extra liquid is out. Now what do I do with that extra liquid? Sometimes it gets turned into a cool jam or jelly. Sometimes it's used to enhance the flavor of beverages. And sometimes I forget about it and come across random stuff in my freezer that I'm like, what is this strange thing that I have here. I guess I have to thaw it out and see what I've got.
I'm just going to talk you through what I do to make my pie. I've already defrosted my frozen cherries and rhubarb and drained off all the extra liquid. That takes a couple days. Now, I haven't put any sugar into this, but sugar can also withdraw some extra moisture. I just let it drain out into a non-metal colander. Because of the acid that's in those cherries and rhubarb, you can end up etching enamel or metal colanders. Use a plastic one for this. Keep that liquid for something later. I might make a cherry rhubarb jelly or something. I don't know yet. But you want to make sure that you have, in the end, 4 cups of drained, unfrozen rhubarb and cherries or strawberries or whatever other fruit that you're adding to your rhubarb, if you're adding anything to your rhubarb. Then you're going to put that into a regular pie crust. You can blind bake that pie crust if you want to, but we're going to have to cook this quite some time to get that rhubarb cooked all the way through. Because the rhubarb is so sour, you're going to end up adding about a half a cup of sugar for every cup of rhubarb and cherries. So if it's 4 cups of rhubarb, you're going to have 2 cups of sugar added to your pie. I like to just dump it in a little bit at a time, sprinkling each layer with sugar. I also take this time to check to see if there were any stems or seeds or anything like that that have gotten in with my frozen fruit if I wasn't terribly careful when I was originally putting them up. And I just kind of layer it in. Now, this is also a good time if you're going to be using a thickener like tapioca. You can put that in at the bottom and also sprinkle it in layers. That's a good idea, particularly with a very juicy type of fruit like rhubarb or blueberries, if you're choosing to do something like that. And you can get some of the extra liquid out, but it always helps to just use some sort of thickener. I'm a fan of tapioca. After you've got all of the fruit into the pie tin, layered with tapioca and sugar, then you can talk about putting on your crumble crust. I like to do sort of a scone sort of mix crumble top. That seems to work out for me. And if it's not easily crumbleable, you can always just break it up into little pieces and gently set those around on top, making sure that it's all spread out in a sort of even coating. Then I just pop it into the oven, 350 degrees for about 20 to 30 minutes. It depends on how big my pie is. Sometimes ovens are not exactly as advertised. And after about 20 to 25 minutes, I'll keep checking it regularly until it's just gotten that perfect golden brown on top. And you'll know it when it happens. It will look like you want it to look. And that's pretty much all there is to a rhubarb pie or a rhubarb plus pie. In fact, this works for just about any type of fruit. Apples tend to be sweeter. Peaches tend to be sweeter, so you don't need to add as much sugar in with those. But they also drain out really well if you choose to freeze them. So this is a good freezer pie. You got fruit in your freezer, you defrost it, drain off that liquid, and then make a pie out of it. 4 cups once it's drained, layer it in with some sugar and tapioca, crumble topping, bake at 350, 20 to 30 minutes. Keep checking it every couple minutes once it's hit 20 minutes. And once it's done, it's done. Let it cool, let it set up, cut, and eat.